key. If you have a really little baby plant, and I'm not meaning those plants that you get from the mail order house and they have this little piece of paper that says, no, I'm not dead, I'm just dormant. Liar, liar, pants on fire. I'm talking about the little plants that sometimes that a reputable grower will send you, that they're a slow-growing plant, they're a 2-year-old plant, but it's early in the season and they're only this high. Well, if it's only that high, if I plant that thing 2 to 4 inches below grade, that's just not going to happen, right? So what you do is you trench it. You pull the soil away, and as the plant grows up, then you backfill gradually, okay? Some of these things, I mean, even though it makes total sense when I'm saying it, or when I read it the first time, why couldn't I figure this out myself? No, okay, fine. I always have an agenda when I put together a topic. Actually, I always have 2 agendas. My first agenda is always to impart information so that you can succeed. I am very invested in the success of my students, whether it's my students at a gardening seminar or my students in the pottery studio. I want you to succeed. And the best way for you to succeed is to have a positive experience. So, I will tell you all the worst things about myself so that you don't have to do those things yourself. You know, I don't have a problem you benefiting from the really incredibly stupid, ignorant things I have done. Because that way, you don't have to go through them, you'll have a positive experience, and maybe you'll buy a whole bunch of clematis and I won't look quite so crazy with 70 of them, right? Okay. So it's kind of actually a selfish agenda. The other agenda is, you know, to promote good plant selection, interesting different things that you might not have thought of in different contexts than you may have thought of. And with the vining plants, we often just we have blinders about what we could do or what's out there. And also, we don't always know what we might want to avoid. And the information keeps coming in, it's changing, it's evolving, and it's hard to keep up with it. So that's sort of where I'm coming from here. We're going to start with clematis because I like them the best. And it's my program. This is my favorite small flowering clematis bluebird. Actually, this plant has died in my yard because it was totally, the lowest 4 feet on it were completely shaded out by my Baptisia australis, also known as the perennial plant of the year for 2010. And for a few years, the 2 of them coexisted quite beautifully because the Baptisia, of course, is fixing all kinds of nitrogen in the soil. It's a Fabaceae, it's a pea plant. And of course, the Macropetal is benefiting from all this extra nitrogen. But the Baptisia got so big and so bushy that it started shading out the bottom 4 feet of my Macropetal, and it looked really ridiculous. So I took a chance and I cut it down. It did sprout back last year, but it was too much for it. But it's an easy enough plant to replace. I've got it on order from Joy Creek Nursery. It was a learning experience. Okay, we won't do that again. The Baptisia australis has been moved, part of it. I had to use a pruning saw to cut part of it out. And every time it sprouts up near where this plant is going to be replanted, I just keep pushing it off, and I'll exhaust it. Blooms early spring. It's going to be a little mid-spring for us further north here. A nice conservative 8 to 10 feet max on this. No pruning. Now, pruning is a human activity. All of these plants have ancestors who grew out in the wild, scrambling over hillsides and through trees and through the underbrush. There were no little cohorts of berries running around with Belco 6s, and yet somehow they managed to survive. Pruning is about making plants look the way we've decided they should look for garden cultivation. I have 70 clematis. I don't get to them every year. It's like a rolling list. Actually, that's part of the reason I'm having this workshop. Here, you prune this one. If I need to have more people, maybe I'll have 2 sessions. But, really, I mean, part of it, you know, the ones I don't get to, do they die? No. Do they not flower? No. They just don't look the way we decide they should look in a garden. And I'm not really attached to other people's judgments anyway, for a number of reasons. So, you know, I didn't get to that one this year. Okay, fine. It's not going to hurt the plant if I don't get to it. The other thing about pruning is there is only one cut that is fatal. That is the one below grade. Everything else is a bad haircut. It may take more than 5 weeks for mine to grow out. You know, it may take a little longer with the clematis that I pruned badly, but it will grow out. Even a tree that's been damaged can compensate over time. It may take a longer time. And the larger the organism, the older it is, the longer it will take to compensate for an injury like that. But in a vine, hey, right here, we're good, no problem. In the case of these alpinas and macropetals and montanas, that doesn't mean you never take a pair of felcos to them. It means that you don't have to take a pair of felcos to them. And of course, you can always cut off something that's going someplace you don't want it, or you can cut off something that's dead, always. Constance, later spring compared to the macropetals. This is what I'm talking about. You get a macropetala, you get an alpina, you get a montana, you get some large flowering hybrids, you throw in a Folia, Brachyfolia, maybe a Vitacella, you've got at least 6 months going with these guys. Again, 8 to 10 feet, I've got it growing on a tutor. Get some dieback on this plant, but it's very hardy and it performs beautifully. Pink perfection. Here is the key piece of information here. Okay? Don't think they're lying. You can get clematis, you can get plants anywhere. You can get them, you know, at your local nursery. It's been around for 30 years, knows the clientele, knows the situation, knows what does well. You can get them at a big box store where they know nothing. Who shops at big box stores? People looking for paint and plumber's fittings. That's what you go there for. And let's be honest, paint and plumber's fittings are pretty damn boring. I buy a lot of plumber's fittings because of the stuff that I do. Okay, they're really boring. I get the contractor pack, so I don't have to go as often. And you're sick and tired of looking at paint and plumber's fittings, so you take your trolley and you go into the garden center, right? Because you got to look at something green and living. Now, the average person going into the garden center crawls along the aisles and sees a really cool tag and pulls it out and goes, wow, this is neat, reads it, and sticks it back somewhere. The other thing about the plants that are at these big box stores is they're usually grown by people who are doing heavy production. They're not being very well compensated by the big box stores. And the tags have very generic information. Clematis, full sun, right? You put this plant in full sun, the first thing you will do after you've planted it 2 to 4 inches below grade, put some good quality organic compost on it, watered it in well, and mulched it really nicely. If you put it in full sun, the next thing you do is you douse it with gasoline and you light it. Because it's going to die. And you might as well just speed the process up so you can get to the grieving part of it as quickly as possible. And I can recommend an excellent psychotherapist if any of you have trouble with this. Not full sun. So check your research. The montanas will burn up in full sun.